Will Work for Patients, episode 49. There are at least 9 different brands of Perfect Stranger, and all the way to Lifetime Patient, there's at least 17. We've defined how and why no two strangers are alike, and it's going to get you to do something perhaps you've never done, and that's move off of a script, find out what makes them tick. They will become, as you do this process, less and less perfect stranger and more friend. How could you want them to get rid of something that doesn't exist? If they don't know it exists, it doesn't exist. They have to come to the conclusion themselves. You are a guide, not an instructor. There's no shortcutting this process. You cannot cut out some of it and say, I do a shorter version. Don't book somebody who's not going to arrive. I just gave you the secret of how you figure it out. You want to have a perfect appointment to arrival ratio? Do not book anyone who does not display all 3 factors, and you will kick ass at every screening you ever do. You'll be able to create that future. What up, Will Workers? Frank Sardella here, and I have a face melter of an episode heating up on the front burner and ready to burn. Do you find it hard to get perfect strangers to make the connection as to how you can help them? Are they no-showing at every turn or not taking things to term? Can you convince perfect strangers to visit you but not get them to follow through? Well, now you're not only about to find out why, but you're going to find out how to guarantee everyone you book follows through. So strap in, rev it up, and get ready to take pole position. Today's episode is entitled, How to Turn Perfect Strangers into Perfect Patients. Here we go!
Thanks for tuning in for another episode of Will Work for Patients, a free advice podcast dedicated to help chiropractors get on purpose and grow their practices. Get ready to tune in and turn up the volume of your practice marketing. And now, turning up the volume on his mic, big-time chiropractic advocate and your host, here is Frank Sardella.
Yeah, hey, that's me, Frank Sardella here, your humble host, and I am ready to work for some patients today. How about you? I'm really pumped coming off of the last episode. I have to be honest with you. I think it may have been my favorite episode so far because I talked to you about the stuff that really matters and what I've found to be most effective and true. And most of these upcoming episodes are going to spawn off of that idea and give you even more tools to throw in the toolbox and boom that practice beyond the scope of what you thought was possible, which is also one of my hidden agendas. I want to make you start to believe that you can expand farther than you thought you could and really set the bar much higher for yourself. And I know you can do it, and that's the point of having you continually listen to these episodes. And hopefully I've gotten you by now to become the voice inside those people's heads in your community. And today I'm actually rather excited because we're going to talk about all the people out in your community who you don't know yet and who don't know you yet. And actually, we're going to talk about bridging of that gap that we prefaced the last episode with and said was a necessary thing. I figured it was apropos that we cover that in greater detail, thereby undercutting the process to be able to apply becoming the voice inside their heads, if that makes sense to you. But before we get into all of that, I would like to take a moment to pay homage to those who are making today's episode possible.
Do you want to steadily draw quality new patients who convert, increase your case average, patient compliance, and referrals? Well, I'm going to tell you how to achieve it with an additional revenue stream to follow. Using doctor-developed scientific technology, Nutrient Body Sculpt delivers micronutrients, providing mental clarity, relaxation, aesthetic body contouring, more energy, vitality, and a desire to continue wellness care. All while you get 1,000% better ROI, case average, and patient compliance, a modality your patients won't want loved ones to live without, nor should you live without. It even complements nutrition, weight, and fat loss programs you already do. When I saw what it did to someone I know, I took notice. Clients and listeners have been jumping on board ever since. Here's what I recommend. Call 310-905-0800 or visit nutrientbodysculpt.com for more info. Mention Will Work for Patients for offers that will save you big, and even a few freebies I'm throwing in. All to help you build the wellness-based practice you always wanted. I know this can take you there. nutrientbodysculpt.com. Call 310-905-0800. In practice, it's hard enough to garner any online presence without breaking the bank and the practice in the process, and getting online reviews can be even more frustrating, especially trying to get enough to outweigh that one bad one. It's inevitable. Social media is today's word of mouth. Well, I want to tell you about something called DC Marketing Products developed by Dr. Jerry Dreesen, practicing chiropractor, electronic marketing genius, and former guest right here on Will Work for Patients. Well, Doc developed many marketing assets. My favorite are his chiropractic review videos, which comprise a system of exploiting your positive online reviews, getting them widely read, and creating way more bang for your online buck. Featuring a professional spokesperson, the most unbelievable thing about these premium review videos is their surprisingly low price tag, one of the best marketing values out there for practices. So visit dcmarketingproducts.com/podcast for a special offer where Doc will comprise and publish one of these free for newbies just for being a listener of Will Work for Patients. Find out how to get great mileage out of your best online reviews. Visit dcmarketingproducts.com/podcast now.
Man, I'm really super pumped about this episode. This is where I live. This is my area of expertise. This is what started all the trouble. This episode is entitled, How to Turn Perfect Strangers into Perfect Patients. Could it get any more basic, direct, or straightforward than that? And let me just give you a little idea of what I want to cover with you, lest you get confused and get a little dispersed on all of the moving parts that there are to this, and understand how those little moving parts actually make sense. And it's not very complex. But one of the first things I want to do for you is get you to realize what a complete stranger actually means. Like, what does that mean? We're going to have to define that for you. And then further, how no two strangers are alike. No, there are no cookie cutters when it comes to dealing with people. And that's why you might have failed with a script or two in the past. You might have just gotten the idea that people are people, and the way you relate it to each person is pretty much the same. And that's not true. We're going to get into that a little bit. You know, in view of the fact that you think you're there to educate them, this part of the process, this first contact that I talked about in the last episode, is actually for you not to educate the person, but you're going for a mindset shift, and you're going for a point where you can make a connection to them to where they will look to you as an expert. That's actually why I called my original company Screening Experts. It's because of that elevation in the eyes of the prospect that occurs, whether you're a doctor or not, that on this subject you become the expert in their eyes, and therefore they listen to your recommendations and tend to follow them. So we're going to get into that today, but also that you must inflate their interest in something, and I'm going to talk about exactly what that something is. I'm going to talk about how you're going to save the rest for a subsequent visit that you are going to learn today how to guarantee happens, and why you don't want to shortcut this process, and why it's actually impossible to shortcut it. And if you think you're shortcutting it right now, you're not. You're just merely doing a piece of it, or you're not doing any of it at all. And that's pretty valuable and a really kick-ass takeaway. And finally, I'm going to show you the 3 things that should be your primary objective. 3 things which you can use as a measuring stick of your effectiveness, and you can use as a crystal ball to predict whether someone's going to follow through with the offer they accepted and actually show up, and what they must do for them to be considered a really solid patient prospect, and to all but guarantee that they will become one. So let's start right at the top of that list. What actually is a complete stranger? How do we define a complete stranger? What does that mean? So, a complete stranger really, and realize I'm giving you a contextual definition, is someone who has no familiarity with you, has not had a previous interaction with you, that really knows nothing of what you really do. Now, when I say knows nothing about what you do, that person may think they know all about what you do. If you're a chiropractor, they say, oh, he's a chiropractor, he cracks backs, right? So you have to really think with what's going on inside their head. And you need to do that at every minute of the true screening process. And you have to follow it. And part of following it is really getting a perspective of what's going on in someone's head. And the fact that they think they know what you do, you know for a fact, is not what you do. So we start with that assumption that they are a perfect stranger. And for that reason, even people with a little experience with chiropractic, wellness care, alternative care, holistic medicine, physical therapy, conservative care, whatever it is, you need to start with this assumption that they are a complete stranger by this definition. So let's get that solid. Complete stranger is someone who hasn't really met you before, has little familiarity with you. Whether they think they know all about what you do or not, they don't know what you do by definition. Now, I told you earlier that I want to discuss how no two strangers are alike. Well, that's about as far as they're alike, is by definition. But you have to realize there are many colors and facets of that type of perfect stranger. Some people have heard more than others, yes, and they will be easier to enlighten. Some people have heard more than others and are harder to enlighten because they don't understand the logic, or they don't understand logic in general. In fact, I found there are at least 9 different brands of perfect stranger. And if you really want to consider it, from here all the way to somebody who becomes a lifetime patient, then there's at least 17 different breeds. But as far as someone you haven't interacted with yet, it's about 9. Now, I'm going to give you an example of one of them. One of them would be the minimizer. That's what most of us know. For those of you who don't know what a minimizer is, it's somebody that when you talk to them about health issues that you can see they obviously have, that they minimize their importance to you. And mostly to themselves, really. Because when they minimize to you, they're doing it to themselves so they don't have to look at it and take responsibility for it ultimately. So there is one type of perfect stranger. You may have another person who's pretty aware of their symptoms. You may have another person who's bothered by them, has some degree of attention on them. There are those breeds of perfect strangers. And one of the things that you have to do, as a matter of fact, the first thing you have to do is you have to see what type of perfect stranger you're dealing with. So you must first know the definition. And secondly, you really need to find out where they are on that scale. Now, those 9 states I'm talking about, and those ultimate 17 states are part of my lifetime patient ladder that I discovered. And that ladder can be learned, and there's different states of mind. They go in a sequence from bottom to top. And at the top, you have somebody who's living that wellness lifestyle and having the purpose to help other people. That's you and me, isn't it? So those states can be learned, but suffice to say, if you just know that they're there, and you know that different people are in different states of mind, you can actually assess the person sitting in front of you that you're talking to. So far, we've defined what a stranger actually is, and we've defined how and why no two strangers are alike, and really what to do with that. And it's going to get you to do something perhaps you've never done, and that's move off of a script and actually look at the person, find out what makes them tick so you can create a mutual understanding. You can get the person on the same page with you. They will become, as you do this process, less and less complete or perfect stranger and more friend. And that's really what you're going for. Now, in the process of doing that, what you have to realize is what you're actually doing here. I could ask you right now, what do you think you're doing when you're screening people in the public? And you'll probably tell me that you're educating people. And that's your main hat that you wear. But somebody who's just come up from being a perfect stranger to being willing to talk to you, they're still not necessarily interested in any of the technical factors that you need to cover with them. And that's going to be for a later time with them. What we must do now is inflate their interest in the subject. And to do that, we need to inflate their interest in the very next thing they could possibly be interested in. And that's not you, it's not their symptoms, it's how their body works. Because if they learn something about how their body works, and they start to understand it a little bit, it will start to undo the answers they've gotten to what ails them. The stress symptoms that they have, the headaches they suffer from, that neck pain that everybody checks off on the survey. Any of those things, common things like digestive issues, allergies, anything. Those people have come up to you with no interest in that subject. It's not because it's a boring or technical subject. It's only boring to them because they already, quote, know all about it. Someone told them. I don't care if it was the internet. I love that generality, the internet. I don't care who they heard it from. They have their answer already. They are disinterested. And what you need to do is expand the scope of their view so they have a bigger understanding of how the body works, and then they will start to see that the body is broken down if they understand the ideal body. So if you can get them interested in finding out about that, and then you enlighten them a little bit to where their view is now wider, then what you'll have done is inflated their interest, because now they realize there are a few things about themselves and their symptoms that they don't know. And as soon as you do that, the eyes get big. They're interested. And that's the interest that you want to inflate. The way I describe it when I teach the true screening process is picture a balloon above their head. I call that the interest balloon. And you want to continually do things that inflate that balloon. And the less curiosity you provide them with, the more that balloon's going to deflate. But the more questions you can put in their head, the more you can make them doubt what's going on with them, the more that interest balloon inflates, because people don't want to doubt. They don't like hanging in limbo. So we want to inflate the interest. And by the way, by just enough and no more. At the middle of my lifetime patient ladder, the 9th rung is the exact state of mind you need them in. It is precise and exact. You can overshoot it, you can undershoot it. So this can be overdone as well, and that balloon will start to deflate. People could be already overshot on that when they come to you, and you have to break them back down a few notches and then reinflate the balloon to get them to just the right level. Yes, you do have to do that. Therefore, save relief and riddance for another day. If they don't know that they have a true problem, how could you want them to get rid of something that doesn't exist? And I don't care if it does exist. I don't care if you know it exists. If they don't know it exists, it doesn't exist. And you can write that down. That is the most important point of the day here. If they don't think it exists, it does not exist. And you can frame that and put it on the wall of your back office. Have your staff read it every day and make it your mantra. Every screening that you go out to provide, or any screening you do on any person, because remember, every first contact is a screening. They call in from social media, that's a screening right there. You need to screen them. Before you do any screening, remain cognizant of that fact. Remind yourself that if they don't know about it, it doesn't exist. And you need to widen their scope. And by the way, you can't shove it in their face and make them know about it. This is one of those things you cannot do for them. You can't cheat. They have to come to the conclusion themselves, and you are a guide, not an instructor. Inside the confines of the office, as you evolve them along the patient process, yes, you are doctor, which means teacher. But the enlightenment process with a perfect stranger is to bring them along to have realizations themselves. And all you are is a guide, not a teacher. That's an important one to take with you. And there's no shortcutting this process. You cannot cut out some of it and just do parts of it and say, I do a shorter version. I know that sounds depressing because it means the opposite. Well, I have to play the long game. Yes, I'm always saying you have to play the long game. But I realized something myself. Who said the long game has to take a long time? It just means it's a long route. Look, it's a long way from New York to Chicago by car. But if you go 200 miles an hour, it's a shorter way than if you go 55 miles an hour, isn't it? So it's a long game, it's a long way, but it might be a short time. So as you get better at this process, you will be able to develop speed, and you'll be able to do all of the working parts thoroughly, not rush through them or shortcut them, but do them thoroughly and get the actual product they were designed to affect. Now, how do you do that? Well, you got to keep this ladder in place and get people into that exact right state of mind. And the way you do that is through the art of the survey and the interview. It's getting inside their head, all different kinds of things, and we will get into that in a subsequent episode. But suffice to say, if you can do that to any degree without having to read a script, you can actually get the person's scope widened enough for them to really see more than they've seen. And they will automatically be more curious, because when they see more than they've been able to observe prior, then they're not going to have all the answers right then and there. So that's instant curiosity, and that is your friend, and that's what you want. Now, I promised you 3 things, 3 secrets, that these things can be held as your standard goal to shoot for. And you can, through whatever means possible and whatever way you can, shoot for the correct target. Now, most people that I ask, I say, what is the product of a really good, well-done screening? What is a really good product? Let's say you had someone do it for you. What would you consider a good result? And people say, well, making appointments for me. If I don't leave with any appointments, then it's not worth anything. Well, have you ever booked a ton of appointments and had nobody show up? I'm sure you have. Otherwise, the hair wouldn't be standing up on the back of your neck right now when you hear me say that, right? So you're obviously going for something much more than that. And obviously, everything up to this moment applies that we spoke about. The realizing what a complete stranger means when you make first contact, that the person is, by that definition, a complete stranger, that no two are alike, that they are in a certain state of mind, and some are easier than others to get to where you need to go, and that you can only take them so far. Go through this process, the interviewing, the making a profile, the getting inside their head. Yes, you need to do that. And remember those things. That will help you get to this point. But you need to create 3 things in that person when you get the appointment. And by the way, if you cannot have these 3 things, or you have any doubt that these 3 things are in place, you should not book the appointment, and you should continue to work the person until you are certain. So there's something you should write down, and I will repeat after I give you these 3 factors. Remember, this is, you decide to book the person for an appointment. You're recommending something to them, and you're going to book them. Number 1, they're going to show up. Now, that may seem hard to do or hard to guarantee, but you have to understand the next 2 will determine whether they are going to show up or not. So number 1, that they will actually arrive in your office, that they're going to follow through on what you're booking them for. 2, that they know why they're coming. And number 3, they're interested in what they're about to find out in that visit. So you can see number 1 is guaranteed by number 2 and 3, and that's why you need all 3 things. So actually, these should be said in reverse. The person is interested in finding out something. So they know why they're coming, and therefore they will show up. If you look at it in reverse, that gives you the measuring stick. Not just on whether they're going to arrive or not. I'm talking about how to guarantee everybody arrives that you book. Part of it is, don't book somebody who's not going to arrive. And I just gave you the secret of how you figure it out. You figure out right then and there, you determine if they're interested and they know why they would come in for this visit, which again is a very specific reason I'm not getting into here. I covered it in great detail in the screening tapes and also in the True Screening Process module. That's a whole subject unto itself. We can't even cover it in one podcast episode. But you could right now be the judge of whether or not they know why they're coming. They're interested. They know what the visit is all about. And then they're going to show up as a result. That's how you measure the probability of their arrival. And you use that as a measuring stick, not to predict, again, whether they're going to come or not, but whether you book the appointment or not. If you do not have those 3 factors, do not book the appointment. You want to have a perfect appointment to arrival ratio? Follow that advice. Do not book anyone who does not display to you in your best judgment without kind of playing it down and going, well, he's good enough. If you really take an honest look at it, do not book an appointment with a person who does not possess all three of those factors by your observation. And you will kick ass at every screening you ever do. And you'll get better and better at this. And your arrival rates will get better. And guess what? Your happiness will skyrocket as a result. You won't be depressed or pissed off anymore about that appointment book. You won't be stressed out anymore. You'll have some new stresses and problems of how you're going to handle that influx. And the next thing, how you're going to retain them and get them moving on up from the center of that lifetime patient ladder to the tippy top where they're living a wellness lifestyle just like you want and where they're helping others do the same. And you create an army of these people who are, quote, working for you. And you don't have to pay. How do you like that? I think that's a great place to move into our recap, isn't it? Turn complete strangers into patients. Well, the deal is that you got to first start out with the basics. You have to define what a complete stranger really means and realize that no two of them are alike and start to realize what the different breeds of cat they look like, right? So you want to be able to decipher one from the other, see what you're dealing with and what your jump-off point is. That's the importance of that. And then realize that based on that, you have a place, an exact state of mind you have to get them into just to get that appointment booked and have them have those three qualities. And to do that, you must inflate, not deflate interest. And for that, you have to present more questions. You have to crawl inside their head. You have to get to know them. You really have to bridge that gap, make that connection, get them to have a wider scope. And now there are a few things they don't know and they start wondering. And so they have motivation to be interested and to follow through. So just save relief and riddance and care and treatment and all that stuff for a later day. Put it on hold for now. You'll have to take my word for it. It is part of the true screening process, and it falls well above the state you need them to be in on the lifetime patient ladder. And just realize you can't shortcut them up there either, but if you're playing a longer game, it doesn't have to take that long. Step on the accelerator and go faster, but make sure you do a thorough job as you do it. You can drive at 200 miles an hour. You just have to know how to drive at 200 miles an hour. And if you can do that, everything will be fine. You might get a ticket along the way, but who hasn't tried to stop us on the way to our goal, especially when we're speeding there? And then use your yardstick. Those three things are: they arrive in the office, they know why they came, and they're interested in what they're about to find out. That's the end product you want. If you send someone out and you pay them to go out and screen people for you, that's what you want to demand. That's what you tell them you're paying them for. And if you're going to do it, that's what you're paying yourself to do. And reverse them to use it as a yardstick when you're at the screening. Do you have the person interested in finding out something about themselves, their condition? Do they know what you're suggesting and why they would follow through on that? And as a result, will they show up? You will be able to predict the future. No, I can't even say predict the future. You'll be able to create that future. And by all means, don't freaking schedule the appointment if you don't have those three factors. And that is your fail-safe and your no-fail screening, close, and arrival guarantee. And now for the last word. Who gets the last word? I do. After all, it's my show. What should you take away from today's episode? If anything, I'd like you to take to heart one thing: that you are in control of the results you get from any first contact with a complete stranger, and are in control of whether or not they become a lifetime patient. You have the ability to do it, and you have the ability to not do it. But whichever result you're getting is created by you. If you understand the true screening process and the true product of the true screening process, if you understand not what needs to be said to a person, but what needs to occur with that person, you will put yourself in control of their destiny and hence your destiny too. Yes, it's a long game. Yes, there are parts that cannot be skipped and there are no shortcuts. But who ever said that the long game has to take a long time? You can go at high speeds, and as long as your accuracy is up, you will make the grade every time. Take heed of making the demand for a person who arrives, who knows why they came, and are interested in finding out something, and reverse them as your yardstick to decide whether or not to book them to come see you in the first place. When you make the recommendation, you decide whether the person is interested in finding out something about themselves, and if they know exactly why they should come, and if they're likely to show up as a result. And you've not only predicted the future, but you've just created the future. And you will win every time. And I don't know about you, but I'm in this to win. Shouldn't we all be? Well, thanks again for tuning in today and again indulging me. It enables me to enable you. And that's really what brings me joy and why I keep coming back with more of these episodes. For more information on this, of course, you can study the True Screening process. We have more and more products and materials coming out. I would love to have you hear the screening tapes. They have been a labor of love, and I have so much information on them. Yes, it's in audio format, so it's one of the things, unlike my coaching that's done online and in a series of online courses where you have to sort of participate with it. The screening tapes you can listen to much in the way you're listening to this podcast. You know, the point of this show is that I will work for patients, and I know you're willing to work for patients as well. And, you know, the whole premise of that is really the fact that we're willing to do just about anything to get patients. No, not as desperate people who need patients so we have money, but as people who are desperate to help people on this planet at the speed required to get the job done. And we know it's getting more and more difficult. The population is getting higher, and there's more and more false information being shared on the information superhighway. So there's a lot working against us. And no, it's not all doom gloom, because there are a lot of us. And if we empower ourselves with the right tools, then we will win in spite of it all. And that is the sweetest victory there is, as far as I'm concerned. If you would like any help whatsoever, if you'd like an assessment of your current screening process, if you would like some clarification on anything we talked about here, you are welcome to reach out to me. You can get to me in a couple of ways. Reach out direct via email at frank@screeningexperts.com, or you can DM me on Instagram at willwork4patients. And I am looking forward to bringing you a lot more episodes. Please continue to tune in. Have you joined the mailing list yet? I know mailing list is a 4-letter word, but I do have a perk, I believe, still on the Will Work for Patients website, willwork4patients.com. Go there, you put your name and email address, and I believe I send you one of my ebooks. But in the process, I add you to the mailing list, which connects you to Off the Air, which is the newsletter that I send out periodically with information on events coming up, episodes of the show, and even new properties that are being released, like the screening tapes, like the podcasting tapes that are coming out, and so on and so forth. So I would like you to take full advantage of that. So please do go to willwork4patients.com. Thank you again for tuning in, and I will look forward to the next couple of episodes. So, my friends, we've come to the end of a turbocharged episode. On behalf of myself, my staff, and the rest of the Broadcast Wellness crew, I thank you so very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time for another pedal to the metal episode of Will Work for Patients. So long.
Be sure to subscribe and share. Will Work for Patients has been brought to you courtesy of Screening Experts, bringing unscripted simplicity to chiropractic marketing complexity. Today's episode, copyright Screening Experts LLC, musical score composed and arranged by Frank Sardella ASCAP. For more information, visit screeningexperts.com.